In this episode,
This guy came to me, said my bill's like £900 a month.
He's got no money left, Laurence. What do you mean you had a wager with him? He's skin.
Like I said, you have got to take it, unfortunately, with a little bit of a pinch of salt.
A well-installed heat pump should be 10 years minimum.
I like to put my bum on every radiator when I go into the kids' room.
I'm not sure I would have done a heat pump if I hadn't already got solar and batteries.
If it looks wrong, then it probably is.
hi and welcome to another episode of Homeowners Q&A. I'm your host Mars, and today we're tackling a topic that's becoming increasingly important as more homes adopt renewable energy systems. What should you do and ask as a homeowner when buying a home and an existing heat pump and battery? Joining me today are Laurence Bradbury from Orium Energy, Simon Wardle from Ultimate Renewable Supplies, Nick Underwood from Stiebel Eltron, and Richard Burrows from Mid Wales Plumbing and Heating Supplies. Welcome everybody. Before we get started, we'd like to thank Orium Energy for sponsoring this episode. With over 13 years of experience in the renewable energy market, Orium has been a pioneer in delivering cutting-edge solar PV and energy storage solutions. As certified premium partners of Tesla and SolarWatt, they specialize in designing bespoke renewable energy systems that not only reduce energy costs, but also provide exceptionally low-cost energy. Orium Energy's commitment to quality, innovation, and customer support is unmatched. From ground-mounted systems to in-roof installations, their expert team ensures every project meets the highest standards, backed by comprehensive insurance and dedicated energy consultants. Thank you, Orium Energy, for supporting our mission to explore sustainable energy solutions and for helping homeowners and businesses in the UK transition to a greener future. Right, Simon, we're going to start with you. So what I've done is I jotted down some numbers and I worked out that there's roughly about 300,000 heat pumps that have been installed in the UK over the last couple of years, which means that your chances when you're actually going out to buy a new property of there being a heat pump installed in a property are actually getting better and better. If you were to put yourself in the role of a homeowner and you go to a house that you're potentially looking to buy and it's got a heat pump, what kind of red flags would you be looking for?
I know what red flags I'd be looking for because I'm in the industry, but as a homeowner's point of view, I think the obvious one is to ask for a look at an energy bill and to see the running cost of that home. It's just a strange one when you're going to go and buy it, really, because I'm currently looking to buy a house at the minute, and I actually went to go and see with a Daikin which was already installed, and I pretended I didn't know nothing about air source heat pumps, and they had a lovely new Daikin on the wall, and she was running it at 65 degrees. So, and I kind of said, what's the running cost? And she said, I don't really care. I've got solar PV and battery storage. But she said, I like to put my bum on every radiator when I go into the kids' room and keep a warm bum. So, yeah.
What a strange woman.
Yeah, what a strange woman. But no concept. But I said to her, so I asked her some questions, how it's run. She just said it works like a boiler. It's the same temperature as a boiler. The running cost must have been through the roof. To simply answer the question, it would be to start off with, does the house get up to temperature? Is it warm? But there's a flip side to that, Mars, because the homeowner that's selling that house or potentially selling that house is not going to go, it's freezing cold. One thing I'd always say to homeowner is look at the cylinder, look at the control strategy, ask for that can't lie. Ask for the energy bills, ask for in the winter as well. Ask for them running costs in the winter.
What about you, Richard? Same question to you. So if you were to be looking to buy a house and it's got a heat pump, what would you be looking for?
Small radiators and small pipework, Mars, to be honest. So if you rock in that house and it's got, letterbox, especially if it's new build property and it's got, letter size radiators, then that's going to be a bit of a red flag, because normally that's going to be indicative that it's going to be, a higher flow temperature. And, you're not going to get the efficiencies that way. Have a look at actually what's been installed as well. And just maybe even just have a look at the pipework at the back of it, see if it's insulated, see if there's been some sort of care put behind the installation of that heat pump. Because if it looks wrong, then it probably is. So if you're moving into an area, maybe it's the biggest piece of advice I'll probably give is if there's a good local installer. So if there's a Heat Geek or someone really recommended out there that is in that local area, just get them come and have a look at the system. Just get them to come and just pay a couple of hours of their time just to come and give it a once over. Just have a look, just see if it's got the ability to be efficient, because obviously it's the longer term. running costs that are gonna affect things. And unfortunately, we're seeing this a lot on like the Eco4 schemes. Actually, is where you have someone has a heat pump installed, and it's not until like month 2 or 3 when you get that bill in that you go, oh my god, because it might have been running okay in the summertime where you've just been doing like your domestic hot water, but that first couple of months in the winter, and then you get to like month 2 or 3, and then you actually get that bill and you go, oh my god, this is significant. I'm not sure, should I be paying this much? It's unfortunately at that point it's too late, and you've already spent that money, and you now owe that you owe that energy company that money now. So it's gone too far where that little bit of money may be spent up front, just getting someone just come and verify that what you're seeing, it isn't you just imagining it. But if it doesn't look right, because if you're used to a gas boiler system and you've been used to high temperature systems, then if you're going into a new house, you should be expecting bigger radiators, bigger looking pipe work, and that the installation, because this unit's sitting outside your house, that the installation of that should look quite good. If it doesn't, then maybe just question that.
Just following up on what Richard said, an easy one for the installer to look at is the lagging pipework outside. Go and look at the pipework at the back of the unit. If care's been taken over that tells the bigger picture. That's where I would start from. And as Richard followed up, ask for who installed it and see if they are local and do a bit of checking out, because these things for homeowners to get repaired can sometimes cost up to say 2 to 3, 4,000 to get some change of pipe work or change in radiators. So yeah, check out that installer. But another one, just following up on Richard as well, sorry, is small pipe work. I've got 12 mil microbore all in my house, all on radiators. Mine works absolutely fine. Microbore is not an issue. And small radiators, MCS told me I needed to change all 11 radiators in my house. I didn't change one. And so I done it a different way, and I would upgrade them as I went along. I was living with that. I've gone through now 6 months and I haven't had to change one radiator, and we've gone through a really cold period as well. So yes, Richard's right. Look at the pipework. The flow and returns certainly need to be bigger, but I've got 12 mil microbore after my flow and returns, and my system works absolutely great, and I'm achieving about 4.25 SCOP. So it's not all about pipe work.
So, Laurence, I would imagine you'd be quite outspoken if you were to go and buy a house and actually ask questions. If you did see a heat pump, would you be confident enough to ask for an energy bill?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, it really should be in the home buyers pack, actually, shouldn't it? I mean, I don't know if it is. I don't think it is. I know an EPC is part of the home buyers pack, but I mean, let's be honest though. Different people have different needs. I've got a mate who likes to run his house at 19 degrees, and I find that 19 degrees is my bedroom temperature. That's a bit chilly. 18 degrees actually, but other people, especially females, seem to want the temperature a little bit higher. So 23 degrees is, I think, more usual in that regard. So I mean, the energy bill will give you a fairly good idea of what the run costs are. Before I put my heat pump in, I was just running my gas boiler at lower and lower flow temperatures just to see, like, when it was bloody freezing outside, whether or not it was bloody freezing inside, So am I cold? Yes, I am. Oh dear, I better turn the gas boiler up. But I knew from that testing that I needed a heat pump that could go to at least 60 degrees of flow temperature when it was in negative figures outside. I think the MCS stuff is fine in a vacuum, right? But actually, I think we're never ever going to achieve mass adoption of heat pumps if we have to go around and replace everybody's radiator in, it's just not going to work. So my design criteria was I'm buying a heat pump that can go to the flow temperatures necessary so that I can reuse all of the radiators that I bought only 5 years ago.
So, Nick, a lot of our forum users are beginning to become a lot more astute. And we actually had a recent question where there was a homeowner that had found a house they were interested in. And their question was, what could they do to assess whether a heat pump has been correctly sized for that property?
With every installation, there should be a full set of plans that the customer should be given. They should be given a design of the installation. And the key thing is their heat loss information. Anything that's been installed, the customer should have a handover pack. And in that handover pack, a conscientious installer will put a heat loss in there. And so that information should be made available at the point that's handed over. Everything the customer needs should be in there. Look at the obvious things. You know, if there isn't a pump installed on a property you're looking at, look at the obvious things. Look at the windows. Is it double glazed? Look at, any running bills. You know, the bills will immediately tell you. I think they're key to most things. They make my life a lot easier. If somebody can present me a set of bills, happy days, because I can tell you to the pound what a heat pump is going to cost you to run. It makes an installer's life a lot easier. But the key thing is insulation work, any building work that's been done to a property, to a retrofit property, to an older property. It all needs to be investigated. But the key thing, if the pump is there, ask for the handover pack. Ask for the designs, ask for the system design, ask for the installer details, ask for service information. You know, if they say that pump's only been in 2 or 3 years, but has it been serviced? Because if it hasn't, the likelihood is the warranty may well have disappeared. There's some real basic things there that you can avoid, or you can dodge a bullet very quickly just by asking some basic information. But for me, if I was buying a retrofit property, hands down, it would be bills straight away. What's the running costs? Give me a year's worth of bills, or give me 6 months worth of bills. Give me something to work from, and give me the handover pack for that heat pump, including the service history for it. As a manufacturer, I can still say that 90% of the issues that I go to are install related. There's nothing wrong with the heat pumps. It's installation and design. Purely installation and design. You can heat most things with renewables. I mean, we've done castles with seawater, and they're single glazed, 3 foot thick walls, and we've got temperature in the building. But there is the balance point, and that balance point is, it's got to be right for the customer. It's got to be right for the property. It's about design, and the key thing is, has that design been done properly? Has that installation been done properly? And for me, that everything should be in that homeowner's handover pack or design.
Homeowners, don't be put off if you're walking into a leaky house,
Absolutely.
old house with a heat pump on. As Nick said, we've got one on the Bank of Clyde in Scotland on single glazed windows, 450 mil thick walls with 200 mil worth of loft insulation. It keeps that house at 19.5 degrees all year round. But yeah, of course it costs more to run because it's a leaky bugger of a house. But it would be the same scenario if it was a boiler on that house. So don't think the myth is that houses need to be wrapped in cotton wool and insulation. That's not the case.
It's knowing ahead of time what you're walking into. That's the key thing. As long as you've got that information, as long as you're prepared and you're expected, and you can see those bills. And actually, some of them are not as bad as you think in terms of running costs as well. With the addition of the new fan coil radiators, the industry's moved at such a pace. I had a 4-year break, and I came back into the industry, and all of a sudden pumps were achieving 75 degrees. I was, pardon? Yeah, we can achieve 75 degrees now, and on our ground source we can achieve 90. An injection of 90 degrees into the hot water is unbelievable now what they're capable of doing. So the gap between what you could fit a house in, where you could fit a pump, is getting smaller. More and more retrofits are becoming possibility, but it's putting your faith in the right installer. A bit of homework really before you buy a new house or before you invest in a pump, is get the basics. And those for me are the basics without doubt.
Are you thinking about getting a heat pump? Then don't get caught out by a bad installation. Bodge Buster is your essential guide to asking the right questions and spotting red flags before it's too late. Written from real homeowner experience, this book gives you the knowledge to avoid costly mistakes and make informed decisions. Get Bodge Buster today in print or for Kindle, link in the description. Richard, I really like what you said a little bit earlier in terms of it's almost like getting a survey, getting a local installer, a credible installer to come and just verify everything. I would also be quite tempted to get them to do another heat loss just to make sure that the heat loss calculations were done correctly. Would you support that?
Yeah, I mean, the heat loss is key because the problem is if you go like by the Sibsey Heat and Design Guide, which is what, a lot of the old school engineers used to use. I mean, it's still very current today. I know when you go on your off-tech courses and things like that for your gas and your oils, you're given the Heat and Design Guide as one of your textbooks to use. So I do know a lot of installers use it, but what it generally does is over-egg everything. So the air change rates are wrong, the fabric of the building, the figures they give are wrong. So when you do the heat loss calculations using the Heat and Design Guide, which everyone does, Even a lot of the software companies that are out there use the heat and design guide for their figures and facts. I mean, some do tweak it, but ultimately, a lot of people use that. But it's normally over-egged. So, where you could have got away with maybe a 5 kilowatt heat pump in a property, actually the heat and design guide saying, you've got to go for an 8 kilowatt heat pump. Already you're over-egging the design. So heat loss reports are good as long as they're done to some recognized standard that what the report is giving you is probably a bit over-egged. You just need to work that out. What you'll find, so if you look at, there's heatpumpmonitor.org out there, and the Open Energy Monitor boys run that, and what it shows is actually the capacity that was installed actually versus the actual operational capacity of what's the energy that's actually going into the home versus what the installer thought it was. And what it normally shows, literally every single heat pump, is that the design capacity was well over what the actual usage capacity was. So you're looking at, people that have been designed at maybe 8 kilowatts, actually the heat loss of that property was about 4.5. That can be good in a sense, because if you oversize a heat pump, you actually have a bigger evaporator on the heat pump, and that has the potential to actually absorb more energy. So if the heat pump's ticking over and the evaporator's bigger, then in theory your heat pump should run a bit more efficient. So actually, what they sort of find on Open Energy Monitor, and especially with with some of the tests that have been done around heat pumps, by government, is actually the hotter you run them, the less efficient they become. At what point the cost parity and everything for that becomes, because obviously, like Simon said, you don't want to go around changing all your radiators if you don't have to. But if they're in that home for a long term, then it may be beneficial to change the radiators, because if you can get the COP of that heat pump up, maybe you can double it. So say it's running at, 2.5, and you can actually double it up to the high 4s if you change your radiators. If you're living in that property for a long time, then that brings your energy costs down. Obviously, that's taken out the equation solar or PV, but if you're having to pay for that energy, so on the dark days where the sun's not shining, then you want to try and have an efficient heat pump running at high, as high a COP as you can get. But obviously there is that cost, and that's, I'm involved in research around that as well. And it's just interesting things that, the heat loss thing is a big key thing. But like I said, you have got to take it, unfortunately, with a little bit of a pinch of salt.
Richard's absolutely bang on. It's the heat loss. And one thing I want homeowners to be aware of is I'd be more worried buying a new build than I would a retro with a heat pump. The new build side are slinging them in with the wrong kind of controls. If a retro's been done, they've normally gone through them baby steps of picking out a local installer. New build is a totally different kettle of fish, and you're not going to find out who's installed it. They're not going to tell you that information. It doesn't need MCS either, so there's no background checks to do there. So it's going to be a bit of a minefield on new build, because unfortunately a lot of the new builds will just go with the cheapest quote. And again, we've just done one where, going back to heat loss, we have just done one this week where I'm not going to name the manufacturer because we work with them, but their design come out with a 20 kilowatt heat loss on a new build, and we come out at 7.3 kilowatts. They were putting in 2 heat pumps per property, and we're putting 1 per property. Now, that manufacturer lost that order and they've gone with our design, but that was based on what Richard just said on air changes. They had done 3 to 2 air changes, which homeowners won't understand about. They got the fabric right, and that was more or less bob on. It was the air change that makes a huge difference. But had that 20 kilowatts gone in and we hadn't picked that up at the 11th hour, there'd have been a homeowner sat there in a brand new build that needed only 7.2 kilowatt heat loss, and they've got 20 kilowatt worth of heat pump there. It would have cost them a fortune to run that house, and them heat pumps wouldn't have lasted very long because they'd have just been cycling all through the winter, turning on and off.
Yeah, I was just on the new build thing, because there's quite an interesting point where you got the performance gap, unfortunately, of new build properties. So where the developers actually gone in and gone, well, we've designed these houses, they're ultra low kilowatt usage, they're sub 2 kilowatts a property, but then actually when it was built, the builders didn't take the care or the attention needed to achieve that. And then actually they put a heat pump, say they put in like a 3 kilowatt heat pump, but actually because they didn't do the fabric quite right. They skipped out on materials, or they changed the spec very slightly. That property ends up with a bigger heat loss, which then your heat pump's now too small. So what Simon said, with the retrofit, you can only oversize them, really. You know what I mean? Unless you got it really wrong, you can only oversize them. Where with new builds, they're actually undersizing them. So you've got this issue, you've got that issue to contend with. So like for homeowners, it's a bit of a nightmare field out there, because oversizing doesn't seem to have too much a negative effect on, as long as it's not grossly oversized, like Simon said. You don't want a 20 kilowatt heat pump in a property that's meant to be 7, but you can go into a new build property with an undersized heat pump because of that performance gap on the building materials. So just got to watch out for that thing as well.
So, Laurence, we've spoken quite a lot about red flags when it comes to heat pumps. Are there red flags when you go into a property that's got battery storage?
I mean, the first thing you're going to notice is the manufacturer's badge, and I think you're probably going to tell an awful lot by what that says. The typical things are how many kilowatt hours of storage you've got, what's the power output, which is the thing that everybody kind of forgets about. Everybody's focused on the amount of kilowatt hours of storage, but people don't realize that the output power could be limited at 3 kilowatts. So the minute you've got the kettle boiling and you just switch on the oven, you're starting to draw from the grid, and actually it's probably even more important with a heat pump, which creates basically a base load draw of, say, like maybe 1.2 kilowatts or something like that. So yes, I would say manufacturer, kilowatt hours, and kilowatts of power are probably the 3 things that you should be concerned with if you're walking into a house for the first time.
Nick, going back to heat pumps now. So we mentioned warranties and servicing. So it's, again, has to be in that homeowner's interest to ask whether that heat pump has been serviced, because if a service has been missed, I'm guessing that warranty might then be voided if something does go wrong with that heat pump.
Can do, unfortunately, and some manufacturers are more rigid than others. Some are flexible and are more understanding and easier to work with. I mean, I'd like to think, we partner with our installers a little bit more, so there's more flexibility there. But at the end of the day, ultimately, if a system's not been serviced, not been looked after, not been checked, and there's been numerous problems, then the likelihood is, if you're buying that property, you're buying a pump that essentially has no warranty. It's a horrible situation to be in, but again, it's one of those things before you buy that property that, ask for the service history.
We don't want to scare homeowners to death either. There's not a lot to go wrong with an air source heat pump. It's a fridge that works back to front. When you walk into a brand new house and it's got a fitted fridge, or the first thing you don't do is go to the fridge and go, has it had this serviced? Is it going to work? Is it not working? You put your hand in the freezer and you put your hand in the fridge and it's doing what it should be doing. So there's not many parts to go wrong on an air source heat pump. If it hasn't been serviced, the better guys out there, or the better suppliers, will go and look after that kit regardless. But 9 times out of 10, as Nick and Richard have already sat on, it's 9 times out of 10, it's going to be an installation error. So when you're going there, it might be block filters, or it just might need a quick service. There won't be, to be fair, over 1,000 heat pumps have gone out of our door in the last 18 months. I've had one back that was low on refrigerant, and that's 1 out of over 1,000 heat pumps. And some of them, we're not white and white, some of them have been put in there not very well, and we've gone in there to pick up the pieces, but it's normally from an install side, not from a manufacturing fault side. I'm going to be host for 2 seconds. I'm going to put a question back to you, Mars.
Please do.
You've got thousands of homeowners that contact you on a weekly basis. You're filtering this all down. Is it, you tell us, what are they saying to you? Is it normally heat pump's not working, or it's faulty, or is it just really can't get warm and can't get the house up to temperature? And then they must come back to you and kind of go, thank you, Mars, you've put this person in contact with us, heat pump's working fine now. You tell us, is the heat pump being swapped out, or is it just down to a poor installation?
It's never the heat pump. The heat pumps are always okay. They always work. Even in our case, we don't have a particularly great installation, but I know that the heat pump is delivering 45 degrees, which is what it's supposed to be doing at that point in time. The distribution aspects of it are fine. The biggest issues that our homeowners face are 1,000%. The house is cold and it costs a fortune to run. And that fortune to run means that that heat pump is actually working. It's just not working the way that it was supposed to actually work. So I would probably say 95% of instances, it has come down to just a shocking installation.
You can be host again now, Mars. Sorry.
Richard, I'm glad we touched on new builds because we had a very interesting case. It was probably about 3 years ago. There was a lady, she'd bought a house as part of an estate, and all of the houses had heat pumps put in. All the houses were built to a very similar spec. She had the same sized heat pump as everybody else on the street, yet hers was the only house that cost a fortune to run, and it was very cold. And she raised this multiple times with the developers, and they just refused to help her. To the point where she then sold up and moved within probably about 6 months of actually purchasing this house. So you gave the advice of actually getting an installer to come to maybe a house that's already been built as opposed to a new build. Would that same advice apply to a new build?
Very difficult with a new build, isn't it?
Mhm.
Because you're kind of relying on that builder and that installer, whoever's done that work, to have done it to the specifications that were stipulated. So if they haven't done that, and you know what I mean? Like I said, it's just that one house in a row of houses, isn't it? Normally, the top tip for buying new build houses is buy the one that the show house on the estate. Do you know what I mean? Because they got that one right, you know. So, buy that one. My mum and dad did that, actually. They bought the show house because, what could be wrong with the show house? Do you know what I mean? So, I think that's worked out quite well for them.
Easy one to work out is go round the house and add up how many pumps you've got on the system. Homeowners, look at the heating pumps, and you'll normally find one at the end of a underfloor heating manifold or one on a pre-plumbed cylinder. If you've got more than 2 of those in your house and you're not in a Grand Designs house over 400 meters squared, you should have no more than 2 pumps in the entire system. 90% of what we do, we have 1 pump. If you go round adding up all the pumps and you're counting more than 3, it's not a very well designed system. These pumps cost £100 a year upwards to run. So you can start doing the math by adding up. I've gone into some houses where we've ripped out 9 pumps and they wonder why they see a saving after the first year. They've got a saving straight away. We're ripping out £900 worth of running cost on pumps. So that's another thing that they can easily look out for. Start totting up how many pumps are in the house.
We've got 4.
Well, you got 2 too many. I know you live in a castle though, Miles. So actually you might need 3 on yours, to be fair. But I think you've still got a buffer, haven't you? To be fair.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're going to need 1 post on the secondary circuit anyway. A well-designed system should never have more than 2 heating pumps.
Are you new to heat pumps and feeling lost? Then From Zero to Heat Pump Hero helps you understand, operate, and optimize your system. No jargon, just simple practical advice from one homeowner to another. Take control of your heating and save energy. Get your copy now. Link in the description. So Laurence, on our last episode, we actually discussed quite a lot about flexible time of use tariffs. And I almost got the impression that, and you can actually correct me if I'm wrong, but a battery, if it's installed, even with a kind of expensive heat pump to run, you can actually use those time of use tariffs to still bolster your heat up when, the electricity is super cheap at that point in time. Would that be a potential strategy for homeowners that are looking to buy a house that might have a slightly dodgy heat pump and then supplement that with a battery?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, at the moment, the case for batteries is unquestionable. You can save 70% of your running costs just by installing a battery and switching to a time of use tariff. Now, whether you've got a heat pump or not, it doesn't really matter. So, guess what? 65% of your money could be saved by installing a battery. Then, I think when you've got that, then heat pumps make huge amounts of sense. I'm not sure I would have done a heat pump if I hadn't already got solar and batteries. If you just took unmitigated cost of electricity, you're looking at about £6 a day. So £6 a day for, 180 quid to heat my home, in December. Yeah, okay, that's probably quite a lot of money. But, once you've got batteries and everything else, it's like 50 quid.
Laurence is kind of the guru on PV battery storage. But yeah, I've got a PV system and battery, and if we can see that now, there's mine on a 10 kilowatt battery, and I'm currently running my air source heat pump. So on there you can probably see, and everyone thinks air source heat pumps are expensive to run. I'm currently pulling nothing from the grid. I've only got a 3 kilowatt system, Laurence, but it's now pulling. It's kind of hazy outside. I'm pulling 1 kilowatt at the minute. I'm charging my battery with the excess, and my house is running. And I'm obviously on the computer. My heat pump is running, and I'm pulling 197 watts. So everyone thinks they're super expensive to run air source heat pumps. Mine is currently on, and I'm only pulling for the whole house 197 watts and pulling nothing from the grid. So from that 1 kilowatt simply being produced on the roof, I'm charging my battery, and then later on at night when that battery's charged, and yes, we need the sun out, but that battery we charged, that battery runs the house on the peak times. I'm on Octopus Cozy, so I pay 12p at certain stages, and then from 4 till 7 I pay 36p. I make sure my battery does all that work during that time. And if the sun isn't shining, they're very clever. Laurence knows more than me, but you can charge them on low peak. So I can charge my battery up from the grid on 12p and run it that way. So if the solar's doing it for free, happy days. If not, I'm running my house mainly off 12p electricity, which is back to 1990 prices.
I had solar PV installed 2011, so I've had PV long time. I built my own battery actually, so instead of buying one, I built my own. So I got some old Tesla Model S batteries, which I managed to cobble into my own battery setup. So I got 26 kilowatt hours of battery storage, which is quite big. But the beauty of it is that I've got an EV tariff as well, because we got electric vehicles. I got electric van myself, and so you just charge your battery on your EV tariff as well. So 7p per kilowatt hour. So you charge your batteries up at that, and I mean, my heat pump runs very efficiently, but if you run then your heat pumps off your batteries, and you've paid 7p, and you've got heat pump running it Scott 5, which I tried. That's one thing my design, we talk about COP, but I was like, I want the best Scott ever. So I when you run it like Scott 5 and you're paying like 1.6 pence per kilowatt hour, you're annihilating gas, where you're paying 9 pence, 10 pence for gas, or you know what I mean, or even 7p. It doesn't matter, if you're running your heat pump at 1.6 pence per kilowatt hour, you're annihilating it all. I started off with PV, but obviously then the logical thing is, okay, well, giving a lot of this back to grid. Do you know what I mean? So you want to try and absorb as much of that as possible. So initially the batteries, I built my battery system to harness the excess energy from my PV. But then when the time of use tariffs started coming along, you start going, well, hang on, I can charge off the grid. I mean, I started on Octopus Agile years ago when it was in its infancy, and we did some clever stuff with home automation. Ken Bone, who works for Ultimate, he's a good mate of mine, and me and Ken, when we went through COVID, we both built battery systems and ended up getting them programmed, to charge when it was cheap, and then discharge when it was more expensive. So a bit geeky like that, but it goes to show what you can do. And at that year when I was really geeking out on it, I actually didn't have a bill. So we didn't have a bill. And the things you can do with it, and obviously the technology's moved on now, like Simon showed you. You've got systems now that will do it all for you. You don't have to be a geek to do it. You get the right solar and battery system put in, it will implement those changes automatically. So when it's cheaper, it will charge, it discharge it at more expensive rates. But what it means is that you can actually have a heat pump system installed that's actually running way cheaper than gas or oil or direct electric or anything like that, because obviously everyone always compares it to natural gas. But there was a million oil boilers years ago. Do you know what I mean? So there's like a million off-grid oil boilers, so they could be done. You've also got the direct electric systems. You can run way cheaper than what people are paying. So it's just well worth doing.
Yesterday, we installed a 14.4 kilowatt peak solar PV array on one of my customers. They built an outbuilding, and the builder put in an electric boiler, and that electric boiler is using 70 to 80 kilowatt hours a day on wet underfloor heating.
No.
So they'd gone to the trouble of putting in wet underfloor heating, and like this guy came to me, said my bill's like £900 a month. No, seriously,
Hmm.
my electric bill is £900 a month, right? So I literally said to him in December, like, let's stick a battery in and get you on cozy. And actually, believe it or not, even though they use 3 megawatts in a month, they only used 99 kilowatts in that month of peak rate electricity with one 13.5 kilowatt Powerwall 3 battery. I mean, 3 megawatts of power. Anyway, I've got a wager with him today over how much this 14.4 kilowatt system is. To
He's
be
got no
fair,
money left, Laurence. What do you mean you had a wager with him? He's skinned.
yes, well, he might win. He might win. To be fair, we've only livened up 9.9 kilowatts of it because we whilst we were doing it, we realised we could get 2 more panels in place, so it went from 13.5 to 14.4.
You're worried
Yeah.
now you're not picking up that money off him on that bet. That's what you're
Yeah,
worried
no,
about.
you're right. Yeah, well, no, actually, so
He's writing you a check.
it's traditional. Actually, this is traditional that I bet new customers a crate of BrewDog on what their first full day of production will be. I've said to him I think he's going to do 29 kilowatt hours today, and he's said to me that he thinks it's going to be 27. So because I let customers go higher or lower.
Check the can. It'd probably say Brew Cat because he can't afford Brew Dog.
Nick, one of these questions that we're starting to see a lot more on the forums now is that there's obviously been heat pumps that have been installed in properties now for about 5 or 6 years. People are asking about the lifespan of those heat pumps. So if they're considering buying a house and the property's got a heat pump that's maybe 5 or 6 years old, how much life does a typical heat pump still have?
It depends on the manufacturer. There are still some quite steep differences in terms of the quality of the heat pumps. A well-installed heat pump should be 10 years minimum. Personally, I've still got heat pumps out in the system that are coming up for 17 years old and are still running. Installed correctly, not running overheat. If they're working the compressors too hard, again, those things where designs aren't done correctly will shorten the life of a heat pump.
I always give the analogy to installers and homeowners. Why does a lorry run for 800,000 miles and a car generally 300,000 miles? Is because that car is doing stop starts and all the wear and tear is on your stop start when you first start an engine. It's no different for a heat pump. So if you're running it long and slow, a lorry starts its engine and will go long and slow. Why does that last 3 times two times longer than a car engine? Same engine. The lorry's doing slow and steady. The car's doing stop start. And it's the same with a heat pump. If you're going to put on-off controls with your heat pump and turn it off like a fiddler's elbow, and it's doing 30, 40 stop starts a day, a compressor generally has, and a far cleverer man than me told me this, it was Graham Hendra, who you know very well, but generally it's give or take 160,000 stop starts a compressor will generally have. So if you're stopping and starting that compressor all the time, you're putting lots of wear and tear on, where if you're running an open loop strategy and you're running that a lot lower and slower and not switching it on and off, it will last you very long. I was working for Kingspan when I first started doing heat pumps many years ago. I'm switching a block of 8 flats out after 9 years. An open loop, I've only been a big advocate of that and learnt that 3 years ago. So I'd be lying if I said they're going to last 20 years. I personally think an open loop, a well looked after heat pump running like that will last 15, 20 years easily.
I saw a post recently by a homeowner that said, well, I don't really care whether the home that I'm buying, if that heat pump fails, because I'm just going to use the boiler upgrade scheme to put another heat pump in. And I had to point out to them that it's not the air source heat pump upgrade scheme. It's, if you've already got a heat pump, you can't upgrade it. So, you do have to look after these things.
Yeah.
If you've got any questions about heat pumps, then you need to join the Renewable Heating Hub forums. You can connect with other homeowners, share experiences, and get advice on heat pumps and renewables. Sign up today and be a part of the conversation. Link in the description. And that's a wrap for today's episode. A huge thank you to our amazing panel, Laurence, Simon, Nick, and Richard, for sharing their expertise and helping us navigate the complexities of buying a home with an existing heat pump and battery. If you're thinking about making the switch to renewable energy or already have a system in place, we hope that this episode has given you the tools to make smarter decisions. And a big thank you once again to Oriam Energy for supporting and sponsoring this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more expert advice on renewable energy, heat pumps, and sustainable living. Until next time, stay warm, stay green, stay tuned. Goodbye.